On the 6th of May, 1954, the sky over Oxford, England, was thick with heavy clouds. The wind was so strong that many athletes believed the race should be postponed. Thousands of people stood around a simple running track. To them it looked like an ordinary race. But history rarely announces itself before it happens. Among those runners was a quiet, 25-year-old medical student named Roger Bannister. He wasn't the fastest athlete in the world. He wasn't the strongest. He didn't even train full-time. While his competitors dedicated every hour to running, Roger spent most of his days studying medicine, and yet he was carrying something far heavier than the pressure of winning. For decades, scientists, coaches, and sports experts believed that running 1 mile in under 4 minutes was physically impossible. Not difficult, impossible. Some believed the human heart would give out. Others believed the lungs simply couldn't supply enough oxygen. The human body, they said, had already reached its limit. Then Roger Bannister crossed the finish line. 3 minutes, 59.4 seconds. In one single moment, the impossible became real. But here's what almost nobody talks about. Within the next year, more than a dozen other runners also broke the 4-minute barrier. Think about that for a second. Did human biology suddenly evolve in 12 months? Of course not. The muscles were the same. The lungs were the same. The track was the same. The only thing that changed was belief. The moment one person proved it could be done, everyone else stopped treating it as impossible. They stopped running against a physical limit. They started running against a mental one. And that raises an uncomfortable question. How many limits in your own life are actually real, and how many exist simply because you've believed them for so long, they've started to feel like? Maybe you've never said it out loud. Maybe not a single person around you even knows you think this way. But somewhere inside your mind, there's a sentence that keeps quietly repeating itself. I'm not smart enough. I'm always behind. I'm not attractive. I'm just not lucky. I'll probably fail anyway. I'm not the kind of person who becomes successful. You don't write these sentences down on paper. You certainly don't post them on Instagram. But you repeat them over and over until one day they stop sounding like opinions. They start sounding like truth. And here's the thing. The most dangerous lies are never the ones other people tell you. The most dangerous lies are the ones you tell yourself so often that they slowly become your identity. Have you ever noticed something strange? Two people can walk into the exact same opportunity and walk out with completely different lives. One person sees possibility, the other sees risk. One starts the business, the other says, I'll wait until I'm ready. One speaks to the stranger who later becomes their spouse. The other convinces themselves they'd never like someone like me. The opportunity was identical. The difference was invisible. It existed inside the story each person believed about themselves. Because before you ever build a successful life, you first build an invisible identity, and that identity quietly decides what feels possible, what feels impossible, what you believe you deserve, what you avoid, what you chase, and eventually the life you end up living. Psychologists have studied something called the self-fulfilling prophecy for decades, and the idea is surprisingly simple. When people deeply believe something about themselves, they often behave in ways that make that belief come true. Picture a student who believes, I'm terrible at maths. Because of that belief, they avoid practicing. And when they finally sit the exam, they perform poorly. The result seems to confirm what they believed all along. See, I'm just bad at math. But the real cause was never intelligence. It was the identity that had already changed their behavior. Long before the exam even began, the belief became the blueprint. The blueprint became the behavior. The behavior created the result, and the result strengthened the belief all over again. It's a cycle. Point one, that millions of people spend their entire lives trapped inside without ever realizing they are the ones turning the wheel. Now picture something else. It's 2:17 in the morning. Everyone in your house is asleep. The room is dark, except for the glow of your phone. You open Instagram. Someone your age has just bought their dream car. Someone else announces their business made more money this month than your whole family earns in a year. Another person uploads graduation photos, engagement photos, travel photos, success after success after success. You double tap, you smile, you close the app. Then, without saying it out loud, a quiet sentence rises up in your mind. Maybe I'm just not meant for that kind of life. Nobody hears it. Nobody even knows it happened. But that single sentence just cast another vote for the identity you're slowly becoming. Because identity isn't built in the big moments. It's built inside thousands of tiny conversations that nobody else will ever hear.
Imagine that every morning, before you even open your eyes, someone whispers into your ear, "You're not enough." Not once, not twice, but every single day for 20 years. Eventually, would you question the voice or would you start calling it your own? Most people believe identity is something they're born with, but identity is rarely born. It's built, piece by piece, sentence by sentence, experience by experience. A child isn't born believing they're confident, or shy, or intelligent, or worthless. Those ideas are collected over time. Sometimes from parents, sometimes from teachers, sometimes from classmates, sometimes from one embarrassing moment that happened years ago, but still lives inside your mind as if it happened yesterday. Think back to your childhood. Maybe there was a day when you answered a question in class. You got it wrong. Everyone laughed. The teacher moved on. Your classmates forgot about it before lunch, but your brain didn't, because your brain wasn't just recording the event. It was trying to answer a much bigger question. What does this say about me? And that question changes everything. Because the brain isn't designed merely to remember events, it's designed to build patterns. If enough experiences point in the same direction, your brain stops seeing them as isolated moments. It turns them into an identity. I always embarrass myself. I'm not good at speaking. I should just stay quiet. Years later, someone asks you to give a presentation at work, and you say, "I'm just not a confident person." But confidence was never the real problem. The story was. Psychologists have long understood something fascinating about memory. We don't remember the past like a video recording. We remember it more like an author rewriting a book. Every time you recall a memory, your brain reconstructs it. It fills in missing pieces. It reshapes the details. It reinforces the meaning you've already attached to it. That's why two siblings can grow up in the same house with the same parents and still tell completely different stories about their childhood. Because events don't shape identity, meaning does. Imagine two children. Both fail an exam. The first child thinks, "I didn't prepare enough." The second thinks, "I'm stupid." The event is identical. The interpretation isn't. One identity says, "I need a better strategy." The other says, "I am the problem." One grows. The other hides. That's why two people can go through the exact same failure and one comes out stronger while the other comes out smaller. This isn't just philosophy. It's something psychologist Carol Dweck spent decades studying through her research on mindset. She found that people who viewed their abilities as something that could grow through effort tended to respond very differently to setbacks than people who saw their abilities as fixed traits. The real challenge was never just the obstacle. It was the story they told themselves about what that obstacle meant. Now let's step away from psychology for a moment and talk about something almost everyone has experienced. Have you ever noticed how differently you behave depending on where you are? At home, you're one person. With close friends, you're another. Around strangers, another. At work, another. Online, another. So which one is the real you? The uncomfortable answer is all of them. Because identity isn't one solid object. It's made up of the roles you believe you're allowed to play. The problem begins the moment you mistake one role for your entire identity. Maybe you're shy in public. That doesn't mean you're a shy person. Maybe you failed at business. That doesn't mean you're a failure. Maybe you've been rejected. That doesn't mean you're unlovable. But somewhere along the way, most of us stopped describing experiences and started describing ourselves. Instead of saying, "I failed," we say, "I am a failure." Instead of saying, "I felt anxious," we say, "I am an anxious person." Do you hear the difference? One describes a moment. The other builds a prison. There's an old story about elephants. When they're young, their trainers tie them to a heavy wooden stake with a thick rope. The baby elephant pulls, again and again and again. It can't escape. Eventually, it stops trying. Years later, that same elephant weighs several thousand kilograms, could pull that stake out of the ground in seconds. But instead it's held there by a much smaller rope. Why doesn't it leave? Because it isn't trapped by the rope. It's trapped by the memory of a younger version of itself. Whether every detail of that story is literally true or not, the metaphor captures something very real about human behavior. Because many adults live exactly the same way. They stopped trying years ago not because they still can't, but because they still believe they can. So ask yourself something honestly. How many opportunities have you walked away from not because they were impossible, but because you decided before you'd even started that you weren't the kind of person who could succeed? How many conversations never even happened because you assumed rejection before you'd even spoken? How many dreams died quietly, without anyone ever noticing because your identity convinced you they belonged to someone else? This is why the life you're living in secret matters so much, because long before your actions ever become visible, your identity has already made the decision. One of the greatest tragedies isn't dying with unrealized potential. It's living your entire life obeying rules that nobody is even enforcing anymore. The teacher who doubted you isn't here. The classmate who laughed has moved on with their life. The person who rejected you probably doesn't even remember it. And yet every day you keep repeating their words inside your own head. Not because they're still saying them, but because you've become the one saying them. And that is where real transformation begins. Not when the world changes its opinion of you, but when you finally stop borrowing your opinion of yourself from your past. Let me ask you a question. When was the last time you were completely alone? No phone, no music, no television, no notifications, just you. For most people, silence feels uncomfortable. That's why we reach for our phones within seconds of waking up. We scroll, we watch, we listen. Not because we're curious, but because silence forces us to meet someone we've been avoiding. Ourselves. Blaise Pascal, the 17th century French philosopher, once wrote that most of humanity's problems come from our inability to sit quietly, alone in a room. Centuries have passed since he wrote those words, and today, they feel even more relevant, because we've become experts at distracting ourselves from the one conversation that matters most, the conversation happening inside our own minds. Here's something fascinating about the human brain. Research in psychology suggests that our minds naturally drift into self-referential thinking whenever we're not focused on a task. In simple terms, when the outside world goes quiet, your mind often turns inward, thinking about who you are, your past, your future, your relationships, and your place in the world. That's why the moments right before sleep can feel so emotionally intense, not because the night creates new problems, but because the distractions finally disappear. Suddenly, the identity you've been carrying all day begins to speak. And that voice asks questions like, why are you still here? What happened to the dreams you used to have? Why are people your age moving ahead of you? If you've ever felt that you're not alone, millions of people have those exact conversations. The difference is most people mistake those thoughts for truth. But thoughts are not facts. They're often just reflections of the stories you've repeated to yourself long enough to believe. Think about your own life. Maybe you've been telling yourself, I'll start when I feel confident. But confidence has never been the starting point. Action is. Look at almost anyone you admire. Were they fearless? No. When J.K. Rowling finished writing the first Harry Potter manuscript, it was rejected multiple times before it finally found a publisher. When Colonel Harlan Sanders tried to franchise his chicken recipe, he faced rejection after rejection before someone finally believed in it. These stories aren't proof that success is guaranteed if you just keep going. They're proof that many successful people acted before they ever felt certain. They didn't wait for an identity of confidence to magically appear. They built it through repeated action. Identity doesn't just shape behavior. Behavior also shapes identity. Every small action becomes evidence if you keep telling yourself, I'm someone who never finishes anything. And then one day, you finish a project that single action doesn't completely change your identity, but it casts a vote. Then you finish another vote, then another. Identity isn't rewritten in one dramatic moment. It's rewritten through accumulated evidence. Imagine your identity as a courtroom. Every decision you make is a witness. Every habit is testimony. Every excuse, every promise kept, every promise broken, steps onto the stand and says this is who this person is. If every day you avoid difficult work, your brain quietly concludes, this is someone who avoids difficulty. If every day you show up anyway even when your motivation is gone, your brain begins collecting different evidence. This is someone who keeps their word. Notice something. The transformation doesn't begin when other people notice. It begins long before that, in secret. That's why this chapter is called The Life You're Living in Secret. Because nobody sees the internal votes you're casting every single day. Nobody hears the conversations you have with yourself. Nobody knows whether you're building an identity of courage or reinforcing an identity of fear. But one person knows, you. Now think back to Roger Bannister. Most people believe his greatest achievement was running a mile in under 4 minutes. I disagree. His greatest achievement happened long before the race. It happened the moment he stopped accepting someone else's definition of what was possible. Every extraordinary life begins the exact same way. Someone refuses to inherit a limitation. Someone decides, maybe the story I believed isn't the whole story, and that question changes everything. Because the moment you question an old identity, you create space for a new one. Now let me bring this back to you. Not the person watching this video, the person living behind the screen, the one nobody sees, the one who lies awake at night, the one who compares themselves to people on social media, the one who quietly wonders if they're already falling behind. Maybe you've spent years trying to change your habits, trying to wake up earlier, trying to become more disciplined, trying to stay motivated, and maybe every attempt has ended the exact same way. Not because you lacked discipline, but because your identity kept pulling you back. Imagine planting the seed of an oak tree in poor soil. You can water it, protect it, care for it, but if the ground itself is unhealthy, the tree will still struggle to grow. Your habits are the tree. Your identity is the soil. Most people spend years watering the tree, without ever asking what kind of soil they're actually growing in. So where does real transformation begin? Not with a new planner, not with another motivational video, not with a perfect morning routine. It begins with one quiet decision. A decision that nobody else will applaud, a decision that won't go viral, a decision made in complete silence. The decision to stop introducing yourself to yourself through your past. Because maybe just maybe the person you've been calling yourself, that is simply a collection of stories you've never questioned. And if stories can be learned, they can also be rewritten. Tonight, before you fall asleep, I don't want you to ask, what do I need to do tomorrow? Instead, ask a different question. What kind of person would naturally create the life I'm praying for? Not, what would they achieve? Not, what car would they drive? Not, how much money would they make? But, how would they think? How would they speak to themselves? How would they respond to failure? What promises would they keep? Because the future you're chasing, that will always be built by the identity you're becoming. One day, people will look at your life and call it an overnight success, that they'll see the confidence, the discipline, the peace, the success, but they won't see where it truly began. They won't see the nights you chose growth over excuses, the mornings you kept your word when nobody was watching, the invisible conversations where you finally stopped believing the old story. Every extraordinary life is first built in secret, and maybe that's exactly where yours begins. What if the person you've been trying so desperately to become was never missing? What if they were simply buried beneath years of fear, doubt, comparison, and stories that were never yours to carry? Maybe you've spent years trying to change your habit, trying to wake up earlier, trying to stay motivated, trying to become more disciplined. But deep down, you kept introducing yourself to the world, using yesterday's identity. And no matter how hard you worked, you kept returning to that same version of yourself, because identity always calls you home. But here's the beautiful truth. If an identity can be built, it can also be rebuilt. If a belief can be learned, it can be unlearned. And if a story can shape your life, a new story can reshape it. The question is no longer, can I change? The question is, am I willing to let go of the person I've been pretending to be? Because becoming isn't about adding more to yourself. It's about removing everything that was never truly you. Tonight, before you fall asleep, don't ask yourself, what should I achieve tomorrow? Instead, stand in front of a mirror, look into your own eyes, and ask one question. Who am I becoming? Not, who does the world want me to become? Not, who do my parents expect me to become? Not, who does social media reward? But when my life is over, will I be proud of the person I chose to become? Because one day your children, or maybe even a stranger, will ask you, how did you become the person you are? And I hope your answer isn't, I got lucky. I hope your answer is, one ordinary day I decided to stop believing the story that was keeping me small. That decision changed everything. This is only chapter 1. There are many layers of you that the world has never seen. and together we're going to uncover them, one chapter at a time. Welcome to the Becoming. If this chapter made you pause, if it made you question a story you've been carrying for years, then don't let it end here. Share this video with someone who's quietly fighting a battle they never talk about, because sometimes one conversation, one realization, or even one sentence can completely change the direction of a person's life. If you want to continue this journey, subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Not because this is just another YouTube channel, but because this is a place where we don't chase perfection. We uncover truth, we rebuild identity, and together we become the person our future has been waiting for. Until the next chapter, take care of your mind, protect your heart, trust God's timing, and never stop becoming. I'll see you in chapter 2.